keep up to date with our latest videos, please hit the button below. Hi there, welcome to this video from footballbetdata.com. In this video, we're going to be covering a frequently asked question that we seem to get from people around football data. How can we create a game state model? That's what they're asking, using certain parameters, which we'll dive into during the course of the video, to generate what the likelihood is of an event or series of events happening based on what's happened in the past for games of a similar dynamic. So that's something that we've been asked. I know that from some of the messages that we get from people directly, that some people have already built successful working models that they use to trade in play. So in a previous video, I've talked about system creation, and we've primarily focused on the output in terms of the result being the output. So whether that's the result when I'm talking about a horse race, i.e. a horse won, or it lost, or it placed, or it didn't place. With football, either a team won, they lost, or they drew. There's another approach and angle to that, which is where we see a lot of our members making profitable selections and systems, and that is around the trading aspect. So they're not too concerned about what the final outcome is. They're interested in a segment of that either race or football match and decide to make their informed decisions on where they place a first bet. So we've covered videos in the past around lay to back or back to lay. Essentially, that's what they're doing. They're getting in at one point, they're waiting for something to happen or not to happen, and then they're getting out. And that certainly seems to be the approach that a lot of our members are now taking. They're using the data to drive them towards the selections they need to make with that knowledge and understanding of how the market will react. If there's a goal, for instance, what's the market likely to do? So if they're putting a bet in, wanting a goal, they know exactly what they need to do when that goal goes in. If that goal doesn't materialize, they know their point of exit. I'm not saying they're going to win every time. No system, no trader, no strategy in the world will ever win 100% of the time. So it's all about managing your expectation, knowing the point of entry, and knowing your point of exit. Okay, so lecture over. Let's get into the data as we always do. Now, the first thing we're going to use is one of our Excel sheets that we've already created for you on our example download page. And again, this is a free sheet available to everybody and anybody, and we're going to use the sequence one. So I'm going to click this here and download it, open this one up. Now it's pre-populated with data. We're not going to use the data that's already in here. We're going to use our own outputs. So I'm going to flick back to the website, go back to the top, and we're looking for unfiltered data. So I'm going to use the fixtures and results tab. So the fixtures and results and the data dashboard, the outputs are exactly the same in terms of the columns that you'll get. The data dashboard just allows you to go in and hone your selections using the filter controls in there to get you more granular detail and system control. You can recall those systems as well as you can on RBD. Fixtures and result is purely exactly what it says. It's the fixtures and results from specific leagues. You can filter by your leagues or your season. And that contains all of the games. Obviously, cup games and any playoff or where leagues split is the main season results. So we're going to use the 4 main English leagues. Now we're going to select the current season and the past 4 seasons. Now, how far back in time you go is entirely up to you. I think at least 3 full seasons is a reasonable amount. Obviously, you've got the COVID season within there. So I know people have different views on whether that skewed things, but the data suggests that there were less home wins because potentially the referee bias was reduced, the fact of no crowds being in or lower crowds being in. But I know people have their differing opinions. Either way you dress it up, it was an unusual season. So some people like to consider that and perhaps have a season before or season or two before that as well into the mix to take out any COVID bias. Okay, so we have all of these games now quickly downloaded into our Excel output. The first thing we're going to do is take out any games that haven't been played yet. So the quickest way to do that is just to filter by blank results and that will give us all of our games. So we've got tonight's upcoming game between Brentford and Man City, and then all of the midweek games and games right through to the end of the season. I'm just going to do a shift control arrow down to select all of those and delete those out. Okay, now we should have no blanks appearing in there, and we can select the filter control to get all of these matches back. Now I'm going to port this all across, so we can select either the data, or I've selected the headers, the full columns here, and we're going to go back to our sequence file we downloaded and paste this in. So you can see here that this will paste directly in using the same amount of columns. All right, I'm just going to flick back to this one, BS to BS. And we can paste these values in here. And all of the games are now in this spreadsheet. Okay, now I want to change the format here because you can see it doesn't impact on anything, but I'm just for my OCD more than anything, I'm just going to format this cell, put it as date, because it turned it into a numeric value where I just pasted the values in. So we have all of the games for all these 4 leagues in the spreadsheet that I've downloaded. Okay. Now what we need to do, we're going to look at, so the purpose of this video, we're going to look at the times of goals that have gone in. So what we want to do is convert, where you can see here the injury time goals, we're going to convert these so they are shown as a number. So where we have a plus, which is the way that the data pulls in, so 90 plus 7 is the time, 90 minutes plus the 7 minutes of injury time, it's not actually stored as a number with that plus in there. So we need to convert that number, that plus, to a decimal. So the quickest way to do it is use Control and Find and Replace. So we can say what we're looking for in here is the plus, and we want to replace it with a full stop or a decimal, and we have now done that. So you can see here, if we're ordering times of goals, if we had a 90.1 and a 90.7, it would know that the 90.1, so both goals were in injury time, but it would know the 90.1 happened before the 90.7. Okay, so that's first bit done. Then we need to do the cleansing to get these into the sequence in which the goals happened. So these are contained in a string here. So you can see they're all in one cell, but we can split these out quite easily. We've done this before in other videos, and I'm just going to show you again. So we select the column, we paste it in, and then what we use is the text to columns option, and we split these out using delimited, and we use space. And there you go. So that splits all of the goal times into individual cells, and we're going to go 12 across. So that assumes that there's no game with more than 12 goals. And if there is in this instance, it doesn't really concern us because we're looking for the first goal or couple of goals. And we can flick back to the sequence sheet and paste those in here. So there you go. You can see that all of those home goal times are now in those individual columns, and we do the same for the away. So recap, we copy this cell, we create a new sheet and paste those in. We go to data, text to columns, and we select delimited, and we apply tab and space if it's not already ticked. That separates them out, and then we can go 12 columns across. You can see that in the top here. Just remind you, 12 columns across, and we do shift, control, and arrow down, takes us to the bottom of that data range, and we can go back to the sequence and paste these in. So we now have the away times. So this first game here between Luton and Middlesbrough was a 3-3 draw. There were the times of goals, and here they are split out. Okay, and we have that all the way down. We've just pasted that information in. Okay, so that is objective 1 done. Now we've tidied up the data. We can delete these sheets. They are no longer needed. And what we're going to do is create a reference sheet. Sheet 3. So this is going to be our reference sheet. Now what we want to do on our reference sheet is add in a couple of factors. So let's add in here the league we want the score at a point in time, the minutes played, and we want the let's say our deciding factor that we want to find games that meet a certain range or set of criteria before the game. That could be score prediction, it could be predicted home team to win. We're going to use the over 2.5 average bookmaker odds. Now we could use the Betfair odds. Obviously the Betfair odds were introduced about 2 seasons ago. So using the bookmaker odds, which have been in place for over 20 years, we've got a bigger range. We've got more data in there, but like I said, you can use the Betfair odds. You just get less games showing up until the database has filled up. So we're using these two as our identifiers. Okay. So let's say we want to put in English Premiership, E0, and the score being 1-0, minutes played, let's say 30 minutes, and we want to say all games where the average bookmaker odds of over 2.5 before the game were 1.66, between 1.66 and 1.99. Okay. Now what we can do is find out how many games met our criteria. But before we do that, we need to add in a couple of helper columns at the end of our main data. So let's go to the right hand side here and find DG where we have a space. So we can say score at the home team, and then we can do score at away team and match score. Now in here, what we can do, so we're trying to work out what the score was after 30 minutes of play. Okay. So what we can do here is the simple count ifs, and then we can apply to these newly created columns. This is the range. And what we want to say is the range was less than the minutes specified here. So you can see here that it's showing that the home team, let's just tweak that. Has that pulled through? Oh, we've counted away goals. My mistake. I was going to say that shouldn't be 3 goals. 2 goals. So the home team has scored 2 goals under 30 minutes into the game. So within the first 30 minutes, the home team has scored 2 goals. We can do the same for the away team. I was going a bit crazy there, but let's just flip this over to the away column, and this should show a 1. And what we can do in here is a simple concatenation, and we want to concatenate the home team score, and we do a space hyphen space with the away team score, and we're just going to put a little checker in here. I know I took out all of those games that hadn't been played, but let's apply an if statement at the beginning to say if this is different than blank, which it is, we can paste in our formula, and if it isn't, then we'll apply a blank, and we can drag that all the way down, or we can simply select it and click where you get that little black crosshair, double click, and that will populate all the way down for you there. Now it looks like I've got my formulas turned off, so I'm just going to turn these on. Go to options, formulas, they are turned on. I'm just going to check why that one's not pulling through. My mistake. I need to freeze this cell, so it's a fixed cell reference to D4 here. So my mistake, apologies. Thought it was the formula not updating, but that explains why we're getting all those nil-nils. So you can see this is going to populate down the bottom, and we have all our scores. So there you go, you have all of these games now populated with the score after 30 minutes. Okay, so you've got here 0-2, that's where the home team hadn't scored to the 67th minute. And the away team has scored 2 goals in the first 30 minutes. Okay, so we've now built in our helper columns. Now what we can do is start applying our formula that we want to apply. So what we can say in here is how many games met this criteria. So again, using count ifs, we can go and look at the sequence, and we want to look at column DI, which is the score, is already on it. And we can lock this one in because we can reuse some, if not all of it. And then we'll say the score was 1-0. So how many games met that criteria? Now you can see this calculating all the while. So we've got 1,809 games that met that criteria. We're going to add some more. So we're going to look at the league. Again, I'm just going to freeze this using the $sign. You can press F4 as well. And we want to focus on D2. That's the league. So now that's 354 games. Okay. Now we want to look at the average over 2.5 goals. AL. And we want to say where it was greater than or equal to excuse me, sheet 3, greater than or equal to sheet 3, and we want to say D5. So there's 265 games that were above 1.6, and then we want to do the same for the maximum. So we select our columns, freeze them, and the criteria is in this instance less than or equal to this one. And we can lock that. So you can see 181 games met this criteria. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, let's then look at how these 181 games panned out by looking at the result of those matches. Okay, so we can do a count by applying another, we're going to copy this because it will still stand, but we can add another layer to it. And we can say where these games applied, but the result ended up being a home win. So we can select all the way to the bottom there, to the next criteria range, and we can select the result. Don't want that plus, it doesn't actually matter, but again, OCD means I don't want that plus in there. So the result column equals a home win, okay? And we can select in here, instead of typing a H, we can just select, and we can freeze the row because we can drag that then. So 128 home wins, and this should pre-populate for the rest. So you can see summing 181, so 128 games. So where the league is the English Premiership, the score after 30 minutes is 1-0 to the home team, where the pre-match minimum odds for the over 22.5 market were 1.6, and the maximum over 2.5 goal market was 1.99. Where the score was 1-0, there was 181 games, of which 128 were won by the home team. So let's look at that as a percentage. So we can say this divided by I2, and I'm just going to freeze it again so we can drag this over. That gives us our percentage. And let's drag those over as well. So that gives us a percentage of outcome. And once you have a percentage, you can convert that into odds. A simple 1 divided by, and let's bring this down to 2 decimal places and drag it across. So effectively what you're saying at this point in time is that at 30 minutes, if you looked at a game that met this criteria, you can add more layers to it. But if you looked at the game in play where it was 1-0 after half an hour, you would expect odds of 1.41 for the home team. This is using the average bookmaker odds. Like I said, we can do this for Betfair. The games pool will be less because we don't have a full set going back 5 years of Betfair odds. Those have been in for about 18 months, 2 years now, and growing. So that will become a more popular because obviously people Majority of people who do their trading in play are doing it on the Betfair exchange, but if you're using a bookmaker that's running in play markets, those are the odds that you would expect, because 71% of the time a home win occurs. If you're getting greater odds than that, then you could define that that's potentially value. Now, what you'd need to consider, this is data, and as I keep reiterating, there could be that the home team has had a red card in that period of time. It could be that the away team have made some substitutions. It could be that there's something happened to the star player's been injured. There are other factors, human element, outside of the data alone. But this should be intended as a guide. Now, obviously, all of those factors are within this 181 game pool. So, you know, they do even out. But if you're looking at it from a unique one game individual point of view, you should consider those factors and how they might adjust the likelihood of an event occurring. Now, it's not just the result that we can look at. We can look at the over markets. We can look at any market really, but let's just pop these in just to give you an idea of how you do it. Over 3.5, and let's go to over 4.5. Now, it's a very similar way of doing it here. You would select, and I'm going to use this as the base, and we're going to count how many games. So this will give us a 181 if I hit enter here, but we need to add in our additional layers. And what we're going to say is how many of these games. Now, this should be 100% because we're already saying it's 1-0. And we can use this column here, actual total goals. I'm going to freeze the column. Was greater than 0. So there you go. You've got your 181 games, as we expect, that when they're 1-0, when it's 1-0 after 30 minutes, 181 of 181 will end with over 0.5. It's already done it. So that is pretty self-explanatory. And we can do the same again here to give us our percentage. I'm just going to freeze this one. And we can do 1 divided by that to give us our odds. Okay, so in this instance, it is 1.0 and 100%. Okay, now we can drag this across and we just need to make a slight alteration. So you can see what that is in here. We need to make this greater than 1, greater than 2, greater than 3, and greater than 4. So looking at that, you can see that games of this makeup, where there's 1-0 scoreline in the English Premier League, after 30 minutes of 181 games, 118 go on to finish over 2.5, which equates to a 65% frequency, or decimal odds of 1.53. 30 of those games go on to have more than 4.5 goals, so odds of around 6 would be what you're looking for there if you were to trade this in play using a game of this makeup. Okay, now you can use this as a guide. So this is the probability. So if you're looking at this from a purely Betfair point of view, that is the true odds, if you like, that you should be getting. So although we've used the average bookmaker odds in here, there's nothing wrong with us making that assumption and using the Betfair model to take these odds, because generally they'll be higher. This is purely the relationship between the starting point using the average odds and where the game is in play. So you can indeed use that if that is to be your system. But like I keep saying, the data is only part of the equation. You need to be ideally watching the game or having an understanding of what's going on and what's happening in the game, specifically if those odds are massively above or below that. Because, you know, not only we're talking about backing, but you could also be looking at laying. These odds were drastically below that. You'll probably find anomalies where you're looking at teams like Bayern Munich, Man City, PSG, you know, where the goals are expected and the market overreacts to that. So another thing to bear in mind. But that's how you build a sort of a basic in-game state spreadsheet using data. So the last 5 years worth of data. This is all then editable, so we can put in the English first division, and we can say where it's 1, 1. We can say, oh, so let's just convert this to text. I'm glad I did that. Let's format these cells in here. It still works, but just visually it doesn't look good. So convert that to text, 1, 1, and after 45 minutes at half time. And you've built your formulas in there, so they will react. You've just got to change these as your control options. Okay, so 137 games. Obviously, we've already had 2 goals, so these are 100% of the time, and then 82% of the time you will get at least 1 more goal. So I hope that's answered some of the questions that we've had and inquiries as to how you do it. I'm not going to go into it in any more detail. That is absolutely for you to do, but I've shown you using the tools that we provide how you can quite simply, 20 minutes or so, manipulate and create a working model using our data outputs.